Hey everybody, it's Caitlin from Ozarks Alive again. You probably know this, but I always like to introduce myself, at least at this point, for folks who might just be wondering who this lady is who's always in pictures and talking to them. And so if we haven't met, my name is Caitlin, and I'm the person who runs Ozarks Alive. And I'm still kind of in the trial phase of this new, I don't know, channel's too strong of a word at this point, but new medium of doing these videos where I kind of just share a variety of things. Some of the things are topics that I've asked you all for feedback on that you'd like to know more about. Other times I'm just going to share some things that I'm thinking about that have to do with the Ozarks or what I've been seeing out and about in my travels. And so I'm going to do a little bit of that again today. And the first thing I want to talk about, somebody had mentioned when I put out the call for topics yesterday, was Bonnie Brook. And I'm betting that a lot of you are probably familiar with Bonnie Brook, but I just wanted to mention it again, both as kind of a history, little mini history lesson. There's too much to cover on this topic in this video, but let you know that there are some resources out there if it gets your interest, and also let you know that there's a couple of events going on with Bonnie Brook in the next few weeks that you might want to check out. So if you are not familiar with Bonnie Brook is a place between Springfield and Branson, so on the Missouri side of the Ozarks, where famous artist Rose O'Neal lived. And Rose O'Neal, if you're not familiar with her, she was most famous for the Cupid doll. So if you're familiar with the little cherub-like figures that were really popular, especially in the past, she was the one who created this character. But this was actually just one aspect of Rose's life. It was really complex. She was one of the most, I would say, famous artists, especially female illustrators for sure, in the world during her day and time, which was really the heyday of her work was in the early 1900s. At one point, it was said that she was, at least from what I've read, was said to be the highest paid female illustrator in the world, I guess, at the time that she was really at the top of her game. And so huge influence. And like I said, was not just the Cupies, illustrated for magazines and publications and all sorts of different things, was also very instrumental in the women's suffrage movement and helping lend her talents to help women earn the right to vote. And so had a lot of different facets to her life. She was not originally from the Ozarks. Her family moved around some when she was growing up. And whenever she went off to really, start her career, they ended up moving to the Ozarks and ended up settling in this place. Like I said, that's between Springfield and Branson. And so she, like I said, didn't grow up here, but would come back and visit and just fell in love with how beautiful and how tranquil and inspirational this area was, and especially where their house was. Which, if you read articles that talked about getting to Bonnie Brook, it's just amazing the epic journey, I think I would say it was, to reach their house, especially in that era when roads were different, transportation in general was just a lot more complicated. And so for her, for her, this really was a retreat. And so even though she had homes all over the world and was very cosmopolitan, this was a place where she came back to find inspiration and rest. And so this was actually also where, whenever she kind of stepped back from her work, eventually she retired to and lived at Bonnie Brook for the last bit of her life until her health failed and she just wasn't able to stay there any longer. And so today, the property where she lived is a tourist destination. So you can go and there's a museum of her work and you can see that. But the other part of Bonnie Brook that's just really cool, and I talk about it almost in my mind, it's a separate story, which I love, because the house that is there is actually not the house where Rose O'Neal lived, because that house burned many years ago. But people felt that her story was so important that over the course of many years, they raised money to be able to rebuild a version of the house. And it was not an easy task. It took them a long time. Also was complicated because they didn't, have the architectural plans or anything. They actually had to use memories that they would talk to people about what it had been like and photographs to rebuild the house. And so it's a labor of love that volunteers are leading today, and is just a really neat place to get to learn more about Rose and this piece of Ozarks history. But like I said, you can go visit. It's open seasonally. It's not open all year, but they do have some events coming up in addition to their normal opening hours. And I'm not going to give a ton of details because I don't want to get it wrong, but you can go online and find out more information. But I believe there's a craft show coming up. There is a music jam, which is a regular thing that they have throughout the season. That's coming up. And then there's a car show that's coming up. So a few different things to check out in addition to just going to see the grounds and the house and the museum, which is worth a trip just by itself. It's very, I don't remember what the ticket prices are offhand, but it's very affordable to go in and see all this, and all of it supports the cause of preserving her story and her work, which really has seen a resurgence in recent years. It's really cool. She's been recognized a number of times in the last few years. Most recently was just a few days ago when she was formally inducted into the Missouri State University's Public Affairs Hall of Fame. But there have been national recognitions as well, and Cupie's and her work are still very much alive. So like I said, to the person who wanted to know about Bonnie Brook, that's a little bit of the backstory. It's definitely more complex than that. But if you'd like to learn more, like I said, there's at least 3 articles about Rose on ozarksalive.com that has more of the details in the story, and would encourage you, like I said, to go visit if you feel like it. So that's topic number 1. The next topics, I'll say, kind of fall under the same umbrella, and they're not as specific history things as I, was typically thinking I would talk about on these videos, which I'll, presumably get back to soon. But the thing that's been on my mind, especially these last few days, I mean, it's always on my mind in a sense, but even more so recently, is how do we get back to the good? The last few days in our world have been very heavy in my mind. I've heard other people use that word too, and I felt that way as well. And looking for ways to find the shared humanity and build community, I think, is more important than maybe it's ever been. If we have to move forward together, and remembering the people who are around us, not just the names online, is really important, and finding ways to build connections. And I think that we're, it's not necessarily the default way, but we're in a season literally in the Ozarks with fall festivals that there are a lot of opportunities to get out and spend time with people in your town or your community, have a good time, appreciate the good things that are around us. And I just kind of wanted to talk about a few examples of things that, if you're of a mind to do that you could get out and experience. And one, like this upcoming weekend is, there's fall in the Ozarks. You really go the beginning of September, late October. There's multiple things every weekend. It's just a crazy, wonderfully busy time of year. But in my world, this upcoming weekend is like crazy time to a new level, because there are several really great things happening. Several I will not unfortunately be able to attend because there's just too much, but I wanted to mention a couple of the long-running things in case you're in the area and are interested in attending as well, just to let you know that they're out there. One is an event called the Ozark Studies Symposium, and this is an event that's been going on for many years. It's not a festival in the traditional sense, but it for folks who want to learn more about the Ozarks, it kind of feels that way. It's an event that's hosted over in West Plains, that's tied with Missouri State University West Plains. It's sort of one of the anchors for this event. But it's basically a conference about different topics related to the Ozarks. And so it has, over the course of, it starts on Thursday evening, but mainly is Friday and Saturday. There are 2 days of just different presenters sharing thoughts on different topics. You can see the schedule online if you're interested to learn more, but it's completely free to attend. I kind of think of it as a reunion. It's just a really cool time to meet up with folks who are interested in more research related stuff to the Ozarks. And you don't have to register or anything. You can just come. It's at the Civic Center in West Plains. And so that's one thing. Definitely encourage folks who want to learn more about some of these topics to come out and enjoy that. But on the more of the traditional festival side, about an hour down the road, Gainesville's Hootin' and Hollerin' is also this weekend. It also starts Thursday and goes through Saturday. And this, to me, I've written about Hootin' and Hollerin' several times. You're probably all like, why does she keep talking about it? And it's because, in my mind, this is one of the most classic Ozarks festivals that we have. It's also one of the oldest ones. It is not, there are definitely others that are almost as old as it. It started in the early 1960s. I think it was 1961, but don't quote me on that. Which was sort of the advent year of this cultural focus on festivals and different things, which my unofficial theory, I've not studied this, but I would just, guess that a lot of this ties with centennial celebrations that counties were having in often in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, tying back to their founding in the 1800s. There were several places around here that would do things like have, costume contests and dress up in 1800s clothing and all these things to kind of celebrate this history. And I think I could see how that would lend itself to sort of this wave of fall festivals starting, so they had something to do every year. One of the first festivals, sorry, we're getting off on a tangent really fast, but one of the first festivals that existed actually doesn't exist anymore. It was the Flaming Fall Review over near Ava on the Glade Top Trail, which tied in with obviously the fall foliage and the colors and everything. And that one unfortunately went away a few years ago. But some of the other older ones still exist, and Hootin' and Hollerin' is one of those ones. They have square dances every night, which it's been really neat to see in the last few years. They actually have had a lot more participants than they had in some recent years. There's kind of been a resurgence in that. They have a variety of different contests, pie contests. Of course, I am aware of that one. I unfortunately won't be able to enter this year, but did last year. And it's a lot of fun, different, the typical things you'd expect. And they've historically had outhouse races and bed races and a queen contest and all sorts of different things, lots of music. And so it's going on, like I said, this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, if you're in that area. There's another event out in Elsinore, which is a fundraiser tied to the Elsinore Pioneer Museum, which is happening on Saturday. And will be a really nice moment for the Missouri Folk Arts program as well, because Bo Brown, some of you have heard of him, is being honored as a sustainer by the Missouri Folk Arts program, and an annual award that they give out for his work in the Ozarks and as a forager and teacher. So that's a big thing. Okay, what else? I've got more this weekend. There's something else I'm not remembering, but then on Sunday, for those of you in Springfield, there is a talk by Barry Burgee that's going to happen on Sunday afternoon at the Shoe Tree Listening Room in Springfield, which Barry was officially the state's first folklorist years ago, and was instrumental in helping get the Traditional Arts Apprenticeship program off the ground, along with some other folks. And this program now has grown into one of the oldest in the country that really helps pass on traditional art forms in a formal way, where apprentices work with master artisans to pass down these skills. And it's just been really successful. And he's going to come and speak about the history of that and kind of its early years. That's free and open to the public. It's first come, first serve on Sunday, like I said, at 2 p.m. at the Shoe Tree Listening Room. So please don't be mad that I didn't list all of the things going on this weekend, because there are far, far more than that. But just wanted to kind of give a few examples for folks who might be looking for something to do. And again, like I said, really tie back to what do these events mean for us building bridges in our communities, and not just fall festivals, because obviously that's a weekend or a few days, and then it kind of goes by and we get ready for next year's. But things like that, traditions that really bring people together and help us make, get beyond just names on a screen or people that we don't really know, and help us feel like there's meaning in where we live, and that we can find a deeper purpose. And that all sounds really big picture and all, but I think it really matters, especially as we don't have those traditional things maybe in the way that communities once did, where you had, people who often lived fairly close to home, excuse me, and didn't, these days we don't think anything about driving an hour to work or staying home and doing things online. You had to engage more with people around you, whether it was at church or at school or whatever. And I think we have to be more intentional about that now and find ways to make those bonds. And, one example that I was going to share too that may not really matter to most people, but it made me smile yesterday. And that was when I was out at quilting, which I go to quilting in Chadwick over in Christian County about every other week. I don't get it quite that often, but try to get out there pretty much on that schedule. Anyway, I was out there yesterday. We all meet at the community center there in Chadwick, me and a few other ladies, and work on, whatever quilt that we have in the frame at that time. And yesterday there was a lady and her husband who came, and had painted barn quilts to put up on the side of the building to showcase some community pride. And there were 3 different blocks, which if you're unfamiliar with barn quilts, they're the painted panels that sometimes appear on buildings or barns or whatever in rural areas and can symbolize different things. And this one, if I remember correctly, again, I should have checked this first, but Missouri was 1 block, and then Chadwick, there was a train on one of them, which represented the Chadwick Flyer, which you'll be hearing more about soon from me. And then the other one was a cardinal to represent the school. And, it was not, I say simple, it's not simple. It took her a lot of work to create these pieces of art. But in the big picture, it was a simple thing to do that really, I think, creates community pride and feeling that somebody cares and that something matters to them. And, I just think, like, what are examples in our own lives? That's one example. But what are things that we can be doing in our communities that are like that, that are not, they take time and resources and everything. It's not free, but it's fairly low bar in terms of our talents. What things are we good at that we can give back? Does that mean, helping with a project or, donating some time or starting a new thing and knowing that those things take time. It's not an instant fix in most cases to get something that's super successful right at the beginning, but willing to invest the time and resources in building something that matters because in the long run, it's going to impact where you live and what the Ozarks looks like. Sorry, this cough is caught up with me. But anyway, just again, especially in light of the last, not just week, although that's been a moment, but even beyond that, our world, the Ozarks and beyond, has been under a lot of stress for years now. And we've become a far more divisive place, and it's sad, and I don't like it. And I actively think of ways that we can, like I said, remember the humanity and that we're really not that different from one another, and just looking for ways to celebrate the good and to create the good. And so there's my little soapbox about those things that I wanted to mention. Like I said, fall festivals, if you're not available this weekend, there are resources out there that showcase the many other festivals, and I'm not going to start listing more of them right now, or again, I'm going to leave out somebody and feel terrible because there's so much good work. And I say work because planning festivals takes a lot of work. It is not a magical thing that just happens. So shout out to all the people planning the festivals, because I see you and I appreciate what you're doing, and I know your communities appreciate it too. And just thank you for all of the investment of time and blood, sweat, and tears that you were investing in your communities. But wanted to mention all those things. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is another one that's more just Ozarks Live related, really fast. And again, next video I'll plan to touch on more of the specific topics that people wanted to know more about. Although, hold on, let me back up for 1 second, because I did have it. I forgot I was going to talk about this. A couple people mentioned they wanted to know about moonshine stories. And that's an area that I also need to invest some more time in researching. But this goes back to the Chadwick thing, because there's this great story. I say great. It's not great because somebody dies, but unexpected story, let's say that I've heard about related to the Chadwick area, and I'm not going to have all the details right. I need to get more information to flesh this out. But given that the request for information and the fact I was talking about Chadwick, I wanted to mention this. So there was this story of, at some point in the past, I don't know what year it was, but moonshining was not a calm thing necessarily to do. Obviously, there was a period of time that it was completely illegal, although I'm sure happened a lot. It does not mean it didn't happen. And in one particular case, there was a moonshiner who got shot out in rural Christian County, as I understand it. And the people, when this happened, knew that this person's death would cause a great upheaval in the community. And so they didn't want people thereabouts to know that he had been killed initially. And so the agents that were out there, they got him and put him in the car with them and sat him up like he was alive and drove through town with him like that, so that they could avoid the confrontation. Now, whatever happened in the end, that's again a piece of information I need to fill out some more details on. But just the fact that that's sort of the strategy level that in some of these cases, at least one instance, we resorted to getting through this period. Slightly unconventional, but in any event, there's your half-baked or half-formed story related to moonshining in the Ozarks. So the last things I'm going to talk on really fast. One is that the pie cookbook is nearly done. I'm hurrying to get this done because I'm going to pick up the proof copy, which a proof copy is like, it's not a real copy of the book, but it's a copy that the printer does to make sure everything looks fine so they can do like the final run of it. I'm going to pick it up in about half an hour. So we are almost there. I'm almost ready to have this in hand, and I'm so excited to get this out there into the world. And you may have seen the news, but wanted to remind you that the launch party for this cookbook is on October 11th. It is what I'm calling the Great Ozarks Pie Potluck. And it's going to be so fun, and I hope that if you're in the area that you're going to be able to attend. But basically, this event, it's free to come. You don't need tickets or anything. The only thing I ask you to consider doing is bringing a pie. You don't have to bake one. You can go to the store and buy one. I'm sure it's going to be just as, wonderful as anything if you don't have time to make one. And if you don't have time to bring a pie at all, please also still come. But basically what we're going to do is anybody who brings a pie, we're going to set them out potluck style. And everybody can go and sample a little bit of pie, get to visit with hopefully some new friends. I'm going to give a short talk about the history of the Ozarks Pie Project at kind of the start of the event, but mostly it's come and go. So you can come, you can have pie, you can hear me talk if you want to, or you can come later if you don't. But beyond those things, and you can, of course, you can buy books if you want to do that too, but also while you're there, we have the Lawrence County Historical Museum is on site where this event is happening, which is at, like I said, the Jones Memorial. It is this vintage chapel that is near Mount Vernon, Missouri. So the Lawrence County Historical Museum will be open and you can visit that. On site is also a very old dog trot style log cabin that I have been told will be open for this event as well. Not just my event, because the third part of this is that this is also apple butter making days in Mount Vernon. So you have pie, you have old time cabins, you've got a museum, and you have a very long running Ozarks Festival just a few minutes away. Lots of reasons to come out to Mount Vernon on October 11th. So if you're in the area, like I said, I hope that you will be able to come out and be part of the event. And if you like more information, just leave a question in the comments or message me or whatever, and I'll help you out with that. The other thing, again, in self-serving promotion category, today I finished up the next newsletter for the Ozarks Alive Cooperative membership, which some of you may be aware of this. I shout out to the members I have right now. I really appreciate these people. As a member, they contribute $5 a month to the work of Ozarks Alive, and in exchange get a monthly newsletter that's just for them. Which includes a list of events throughout the region, as well as some other content that is exclusive to members. I also plan exclusive member events, which we've got a couple of those coming up. And just love to have everybody come out for those, and it's been really fun, the things we've done so far. And ultimately, that really helps the mission of Ozarks Alive. I thought, maybe at some point, not the next one, because I want to get more into the history again, but at some point I might do a video just about the funding of Ozarks Alive, which, because some people ask me, like, how is this funded and how is it supported and everything? And it's definitely a labor of love. It's always been a labor of love. But the membership really helps because most of what I produce for Ozarks Alive, unless I reference something in a link that, so-and-so organization helped fund the creation of the story, or it appeared somewhere else first in some cases, I don't get paid for anything I do on Ozarks Alive unless, in most cases, unless that disclaimer is there. And so having a little bit of support from, as many people as possible makes a big difference for me and being able to fund this work. And so if that's something you feel like you'd be interested in, I'd love to have you join as a member. Just wanted to throw that out there as well. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know too. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up this one. Just keep up in mind, like I said, the need for community, how you can become more active in your own community, whatever that means. Is that a town? Is that, your neighborhood in the middle of the nowhere. You know, I lived in the middle of nowhere as a kid until I graduated from high school. You know, and looking back, I think there was one time the quote neighbors, which neighbors is a loose term when you live out in the country, got together for a barbecue when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I vaguely remember it somehow. But I'm like, what else could have we done to try to get together and meet each other even then, you know, long before the internet was something that was distracting us as well. We could be creative and we can help make this better. We can help learn our neighbors' names and more about them and become more engaged with them and all things that I think will contribute to the future of this world that we live in. So in any event, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day. And if you have questions for future videos, like I said, I've got a running list I'm keeping updated. So I have some, you know, different options to choose from for future videos as well. So let me know what else you'd like to know about. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day.